240 players on the WTA Tour right now would trade their ranking for a shot at 500 points on indoor clay in Austria next week, and two of them, Ekaterina Alexandrova and Alex Eala, walk into the Design Center Linz with stories so different, so charged with personal stakes, that this tournament might end up mattering more to their seasons than anything they have played so far in 2026. One is a 31-year-old Russian defending the biggest title of her career. The other is a 20-year-old Filipino pioneer chasing something she has never had on clay, desperate to reclaim a ranking that slipped through her fingers just days ago. And between them, a total prize pool of over $1.2 million and the kind of ranking point haul that can rewrite a season overnight. Let me set the scene for you. The Upper Austria Ladies Linz, now in its 35th edition, has shifted to indoor clay for the first time in 2026, transforming what was once a hard-court winter staple into the opening act of the European clay court swing. That surface change alone makes this year's edition a fascinating unknown. Indoor clay plays differently than outdoor clay. The ball skids lower, the rallies can be shorter, the serve carries more weight because there is no wind and no sun glare to negotiate. Every player walking into this draw has to recalibrate what they know about clay. And into this recalibration step Alexandrova and Eala, two women whose relationship with dirt courts tells radically different stories about what it means to build a tennis career. Start with Alexandrova, because her history with this tournament reads like a novel she kept revising until the ending finally came out right. She first made the Linz final in 2018. She lost to Camila Giorgi. The scoreline was 6-3, 6-1, which is the kind of defeat that stings not because it was close, but because it was so far away. She came back in 2024 and lost again in the final, this time to Elena Ostapenko, another player who could take the racket out of your hands with sheer violence. 2 finals, 2 losses, and a growing sense that Linz might be one of those tournaments that Alexandrova would always nearly conquer. Then came February 2025. She walked into Linz as the 4th seed, carved her way through the draw, and met Diana Yastremska in the final. She won the first set 6-2. She lost the second 3-6. And in the third set, with the kind of gritty resolve that you cannot fake, she held on to win 7-5. That was her 5th WTA title, her first at WTA 500 level, and by her own admission, the most important trophy of her career. So when I tell you she is the defending champion this week, understand that the weight of that title goes far beyond the ranking points it carries. This is a tournament she fought to win over the course of 7 years. Now here is the thing about defending titles that people outside of professional tennis do not always grasp. The 500 points Alexandrova earned by winning Linz in 2025 are already baked into her current ranking of world number 13. If she loses in the first round this week, she does not just fail to gain points. She actively loses them. All 500. Her ranking would crater. For a player who only cracked the top 10 for the first time in October 2025 and is holding steady inside the top 15, that kind of drop could be devastating. She has a 5-8 record in 2026 so far, which is not the kind of form that inspires confidence heading into a title defense. The pressure on Alexandrova this week is immense, not because anyone expects her to dominate, but because the cost of failure is so tangible. Every round she wins buys her breathing room. A first-round exit would be a rankings catastrophe. Let me walk you through exactly what is on the table financially and competitively. The Linz Open is a WTA 500 event with a total financial commitment of $1,206,446. The singles champion collects 500 ranking points and a check for approximately €142,610. The runner-up takes home 325 points and €87,825. A semifinalist earns 195 points and €51,305. Reaching the quarterfinals is worth 108 points and €24,950. Win your second-round match, but lose in the quarters, and you leave with a decent payday but only moderate ranking movement. Win just your first round match and exit in the second round, and you pocket 60 points and around €13,651. Lose in the opening round, and it is a single ranking point and roughly €9,829. Those numbers might sound abstract until you realize that the difference between a semi-final and a first-round exit is 194 ranking points. For someone like Eala, sitting at number 45 in the world with 1,255 points, a semi-final run would add approximately 195 points and potentially catapult her back toward the top 30. For Alexandrova, defending her title means holding onto 500 points she already possesses, while any result short of a repeat championship means giving some or all of those points back to the ether. And that brings us to Alex Eala, whose journey into this tournament carries an entirely different kind of emotional voltage. 2 weeks ago, she was ranked 29 in the world. Career high. The highest-ranked Filipino player in WTA Tour history. The first player from the Philippines to break into the top 30, to record multiple wins over top 10 opponents, to reach a tour-level final in the Open era. She arrived at the 2026 Miami Open riding a wave of momentum that had been building since her breakout 2025 season, where she went 40-26, won a WTA 125 title, made a WTA 1000 semifinal, and became the first Filipina to crack the top 50. But the WTA ranking system is a 52-week rolling calculation, and it does not care about narratives. Eala had earned 390 points for her semifinal run in Miami last year. When she failed to match that result in 2026, losing in the round of 16, those points evaporated. She dropped 16 places overnight to number 45. It was not a collapse. It was mathematics. But it stung all the same. Eala walks into Linz with something to prove and almost nothing to lose from a ranking standpoint. She has just 70 points to defend across the entire clay court season through the end of the French Open in June. 70. That is almost nothing. It means every single match she wins on clay from now through Roland Garros is essentially pure gain. There is no defensive math to play. She can only go up. And the Linz Open, with its 500 ranking points for the champion, represents the kind of opportunity that can reset a season. If Eala reaches the semifinals, she gains 195 points on a stretch where she has almost nothing dropping off. That alone could push her back toward the top 35. Win the whole thing, and she could be knocking on the door of the top 30 again, or possibly even higher, depending on other results around the tour. But here is where the analysis gets tricky, and where this story turns from pure opportunity into something more complicated. Eala's career record on clay is her weakest surface split. At WTA level, she holds a 3-6 record on the dirt, which translates to a 33.3% win rate. Compare that to her results on hard courts, where she has built her reputation, or even her grass court numbers, and it is clear that clay has not been her playground. She did win one of her 2 junior Grand Slam titles at Roland Garros, so the surface is not foreign to her body or her instincts. But junior clay and WTA-level clay are different universes. The depth of the rallies, the physical demands of sliding and recovering, the mental patience required to construct points on a surface that neutralizes power, all of that changes dramatically at the professional level. And yet there are reasons for cautious optimism. Eala is left-handed, which gives her a natural advantage on clay because the spin she generates with her forehand moves the ball into the backhand of right-handed opponents in a way that is particularly difficult to handle on a slow surface. Her serve, while not a weapon in the same category as Alexandrova's, has improved markedly over the past year. And her ability to redirect pace, to absorb heavy balls and find angles, is the kind of skill set that translates well to clay if she can develop the patience to let points develop rather than forcing the issue. Alexandrova's relationship with clay tells a very different story from a statistical standpoint. Over her career, depending on which data source you reference, her clay court win percentage hovers around 50-60%, which is respectable but far from dominant. She is fundamentally a power player. Her serve is among the bigger ones on the WTA Tour. She averages over 4 aces per match, and she likes to take the ball early and dictate with her forehand. On hard courts and especially indoors, that style can overwhelm opponents. On clay, it is a different equation. The surface absorbs pace. Balls that would be winners on hard courts come back. Points stretch longer. And Alexandrova has historically been more vulnerable when rallies extend, when she is forced to play defense and construct points with variety rather than brute force. But here is the wrinkle that makes this particular tournament so intriguing. This is indoor clay. The Design Center Linz is a controlled environment. There is no weather to contend with, no wind-altering ball flight, no blazing sun-sapping energy. Indoor clay tends to play faster than outdoor clay. The ball bounces more consistently, and the serve retains more of its effectiveness because the conditions are so predictable. For a player like Alexandrova, whose game is built on power and aggression, indoor clay might be the best possible version of the surface she could ask for. It neutralizes some of clay's equalizing properties while still rewarding the movement and spin that clay specialists rely on. In other words, Alexandrova defending her title on indoor clay is a much more plausible scenario than defending it on a sun-baked outdoor court in Madrid or Rome would be. For Eala, the indoor element is more of a wild card. She has spent most of her career developing on hard courts, and indoor conditions are something she is familiar with from her time competing in Asia and the Middle East. But indoor clay specifically is a rare beast. Very few tournaments on the WTA calendar are played on this surface. The adjustment required is subtle but real. The ball does not kick up as high as it does on outdoor clay, which means Eala's left-handed spin might not get as much purchase. On the other hand, the faster pace of indoor clay could benefit her more attacking instincts, allowing her to take the ball earlier and finish points without being dragged into the kind of extended baseline exchanges where her clay court record has suffered. Now, zoom out from the tactical picture and consider what this tournament means in the broader arc of both careers. Alexandrova turned 31 in November. She had the best season of her career in 2025, reaching 3 Grand Slam fourth rounds, cracking the top 10 for the first time, and winning the biggest title of her life right here in Linz. But 2026 has been rough so far. A 5-8 record suggests something is off, whether it is motivation, health, or simply the regression that can follow a career-best year. Defending a title is always psychologically different from chasing one. When you are the hunter, every win feels like a bonus. When you are the defender, every win feels like an expectation you merely met. That subtle shift in mindset can erode confidence, especially for a player who's spent most of her career outside the top 20 and is still adjusting to the heightened expectations that come with being a top 15 player. Eala, on the other hand, is in the building phase. She is 20 years old. Everything she does right now is laying the foundation for what could be a long and decorated career. Her interview on Andy Roddick's podcast recently turned heads across the tennis world. Roddick, a former world #1 who has seen generations of talent come and go, was visibly impressed by Eala's self-awareness, her maturity, and the way she carries the weight of representing an entire nation without letting it crush her. She spoke about recognizing her privilege while also claiming ownership of the work she has put in. That combination of humility and confidence is rare at any age, but at 20 on the WTA Tour, it is extraordinary. It suggests a player whose mental game might be ahead of her technical development on clay, and in tennis, mental strength is the multiplier that makes everything else work. The draw in Linz features 28 players, with the 8 highest-ranked entrants receiving seedings. Alexandrova is the top seed as the highest-ranked player in the field at world number 13. Clara Tauson of Denmark, ranked 17th, is the second seed. Ludmila Samsonova at 21 is third, and Yelena Ostapenko at 23 is fourth. Those top 4 seeds all receive byes into the second round, meaning they skip the opening round entirely and start their tournament one step ahead. After them, Emma Navarro at 25, Emma Raducanu at 28, Sorana Cîrstea at 29, and Jacqueline Christian at 35 round out the seeds 5 through 8. Eala, despite having been ranked as high as 29 just 2 weeks ago, enters the tournament at 45 and misses out on a seeding entirely. Intriguingly, however, some sources have indicated she may be seeded 7th based on the actual entry cutoff and withdrawals, which would give her some draw protection. That discrepancy highlights the volatile nature of WTA rankings at this tier, where a single tournament's results can swing a player's seeding status dramatically. Being unseeded or lowly seeded in a WTA 500 is not necessarily a death sentence. In fact, it can be liberating. There is no target on your back. Nobody circles your name in the draw and says, "That is a seed I want to knock off." You get to play freely, with nothing expected and everything to gain. For a player of Eala's temperament, someone who has already shown she can compete with the best on her better surfaces, that freedom could translate into dangerous tennis. She has wins over top 10 players. She pushed Iga Swiatek to 3 sets on clay last year. The talent is there. The question is consistency and whether she can string together 4 or 5 matches on a surface where she has historically struggled at the professional level. The field around them makes this even more compelling. 4 Grand Slam champions are in the draw. Barbara Krejcikova, who won Wimbledon in 2024 and the French Open in 2021, brings elite clay court pedigree. Marketa Vondrousova, the 2022 Wimbledon champion, is another Czech left-hander whose game is tailor-made for clay. Ostapenko, the 2017 French Open winner, is a walking thunderstorm who can beat anyone or lose to anyone on any given day. And Raducanu, the 2021 US Open champion, is attempting her own clay court resurgence, though she has reportedly been dealing with illness and may still be finding her footing. With Raducanu now reportedly withdrawing from the event, the draw could open up even further. The depth of this field means that neither Alexandrova nor Eala will have an easy path, but it also means that upsets are not just possible but likely, and the player who handles the chaos best will be the one left standing on Sunday. Let me paint one more picture for you. Imagine it is the quarterfinals. Alexandrova is defending 500 points she cannot afford to lose. Eala is chasing points she desperately needs to climb back up the rankings. And they draw each other. It is not a fantasy scenario. Their paths could realistically converge in the middle rounds of this draw. The contrasts would be extraordinary. Alexandrova's sledgehammer serve against Eala's nimble court coverage. Russian power tennis against Filipino finesse. A veteran protecting her legacy against a rising star with nothing to lose. ESPN already has results showing Alexandrova beating Eala in a quarterfinal this season, 6-3, 6-3, so there is recent head-to-head data that favors the Russian. But on indoor clay, with the emotional dynamics of a title defense colliding with the fearlessness of a player in full ascent, anything can happen. The prize money breakdown tells its own story about the economics of women's tennis at this level. The total financial commitment of $1,206,446 is substantial for a WTA 500 event, reflecting the tournament's elevated status. But consider that Eala has already earned $487,364 in prize money in 2026 alone, largely from her deep runs at bigger tournaments earlier in the season. A first-round loss in Linz would add roughly $10,000 to that total. A title would add over €140,000. For Alexandrova, whose 2026 prize money sits at around $469,425, a successful title defense would be financially significant but not transformative. What matters more for her is the ranking protection. Every round she wins in Linz is a round where she is not hemorrhaging the points that keep her in the top 15. So what are we really watching when the first ball is struck in Linz on April 6th? We are watching 2 careers at radically different inflection points, connected by the same tournament, the same surface, the same 500 points dangling overhead like a chandelier in the Design Center Linz. We are watching Alexandrova, who spent 7 years learning how to win this tournament and now has to prove that her breakthrough was not a one-time peak. We are watching Eala, who carries the weight of an entire country on her left-handed racket and is trying to rewrite her clay court story during the most important stretch of her young season. We are watching the economics of professional tennis play out in real time, where a single week can mean the difference between Grand Slam seedings and qualifying draws, between comfortable margins and desperate scrambles. This is what makes WTA tennis at the 500 level so compelling. It is not a Grand Slam. It is not a WTA 1000. But for the players in the draw, the stakes are enormous in ways that do not always make the headlines. Alexandrova needs to survive the week without losing the ranking floor she has built beneath her feet. Eala needs to seize the week as the launchpad for a clay court season that could define whether her breakthrough continues upward or stalls at a plateau. And both of them, in their own way, need Linz to be the tournament where the story turns. The clay is red. The arena is indoors. The points are waiting. What happens next is the reason we follow the sport, because no algorithm, no ranking, no stat sheet can tell you what a player will do when the moment arrives and the scoreboard goes blank. Linz is about to give us answers that only tennis, with all its beautiful cruelty, can provide. And for Ekaterina Alexandrova and Alex Eala, the clock is already ticking.